Hope it didn't scare you. It is officially the most wonderful time of the year. That's right, it's Halloween. It's the best and the spookiest event of the year, and even though I myself don't really do much for Halloween, I just absolutely love the vibe and I love spending October watching spooky films and playing spooky games. And speaking of spooky films, here are 13 spooky films that I've watched to get in the mood for All Hallows Eve. So, kicking off Spooktober with a classic that recently just celebrated its 20th anniversary at Saw. I honestly kind of put this film off for years because I was really worried it'd be too gory. Sometimes I struggle with gore, but I think that I will, and then I often don't. So I'd put it off because I was worried. But like I just said, I didn't find it bad at all, personally, which was a nice surprise. I had expected a gore-filled, crazy trap-creating fiesta, but I've been told that's sort of where the series goes later. Completely different to basically how it starts. What I watched instead was a very tense and psychological game of cat and mouse between two strangers who have been seemingly randomly picked and chained up in this room together. Now they've been stuck there, they don't know how they got there. All they know is that they have a limited time to escape, as they've been told on the little monitor screen. Is it a monitor screen? I don't remember in this one, but that old Billy the Puppet fellow. I won't call him Jigsaw again, I made that mistake before. He's not Jigsaw, it's Billy the Puppet, and he looks very silly. Now the movie has a lot of twists and turns that were really great for developing the film and the plot, and you quickly realise that maybe these two haven't been picked as randomly as what it first seemed. I definitely recommend Saw. It's so early 2000s, it screams early 2000s in a way that I don't know how to describe other than just like the flash cut, like jumping whilst like the camera's like jumping about, and you've got this early 2000s sort of new metal-y type vibe. It's just great job, Jigsaw. Straight after the serious Saw film, I watched Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which was a crazy tonal shift after the first film I watched. I will start by saying this is possibly one of the silliest films I've ever watched, and I wholeheartedly mean that as a compliment. So the basic plot is that a bunch of incredibly stupid or silly and creepy looking clowns, whose costumes look absolutely fantastic by the way, they rock up in like a fly-in spaceship circus tent meteorite that just happens to crash land in the middle of woodlands somewhere. They then proceed to start terrorizing the people who live in the town by wrapping them up in cotton candy cocoons using like theme park alien over-the-top laser guns. Yeah. Oh, and the film also teaches a great moral lesson, which is never fuck with a little clown on a tricycle.
What are you gonna do? Knock my block off?
Now we're back to the gore because it's Saw 2. This time with a different setting, and it's like far more focused on the detective side of things, more so than the last one. I did prefer the setting for this film, so like Jigsaw has managed somehow to capture like 6 or 7 people and chuck them all into one like abandoned house. He then tells them that they have 2 hours to search for antidotes to this like poisonous fucking toxin that he's pumping in through the like ventilation, I guess. And if they don't find it within 2 hours, well then, alongside this we have Detective Eric Matthews and his crew frantically searching to try and find the people in the house, because one of them just happens to be his son, unfortunately. It was a really cool setup, and I mean, in theory, I like this one more. However, I did find a couple of the characters like exceptionally stupid, like the meathead guy was just so dumb. But that's to be expected with this kind of film. So in ways, I kind of prefer it to 1, but the first film is way better at creating tension, and overall the vibe is much, much stronger. But it was still a fun watch. So I wanted to try and cover most aspects of horror or subgenres of horror in these 13 films as possible, really. So here to cover cosmic horror is The Void. Now, I heard about this film a couple of years ago on like a YouTube list that was like, or a YouTube video even, that was like cosmic horror films that you need to watch kind of thing. So I thought I'd check it out. So the film starts out pretty cool. There's a cop in the woods. He thinks it's going to be like a pretty quiet night for him. Some guy comes like stumbling out of the woods, all beaten up and bruised and like bloodied and shit. So the cop takes him to the hospital, you know, brings him in to try and take care of him, I guess. However, not long after bringing him there, there's like cult leaders or like a group of cult people like outside of the hospital that surround it, all in like their white robes, not those ones. They're just in like general cult attire, and they have fucking surrounded the place. At that same time, two guys turn up looking for the guy that was brought in by the cop with shotguns. They want to kill him. They're very aggressive. They start fighting with everybody. It gets pretty out of hand. And of course, this being cosmic horror, that's when shit starts to get a little bit weird. I've said it before, like I said it in the previous one when I mentioned Annihilation, but I think cosmic horror is really difficult to do right in film, or at least it has been from what I've seen so far. And for that, I feel this film like simultaneously succeeds and fails in creating a good cosmic atmosphere. Like there's some great like spooky ideas and stuff that's going on. There's some great twists. The practical work is really, really cool, which I think is probably where most of the budget went, honestly, because some of the practical effects are really, really good. Then the rest of it, there isn't really so much of a plot. It's very thin. The characters are whatever. It's just a bit. It's like really cool ideas just wrapped into a not so great execution in a film. But if you are into cosmic horror, I've said that term a lot now. I would still recommend giving it a watch just to check out the vibe, really, if you appreciate that kind of cosmic stuff going on. Now we're going to dive deeper into the spookier films. This one's a mix of sort of a haunted house, serial killer one. So in Sinister, true crime writer, I think his name's like Ellison Oswalt, he moves his family into a new house to help with the book he's writing. So he wrote one book like 10 years ago, had great like critical success, and then ever since that he's never managed to quite get back to where he once was. However, this time he thinks he's onto something special, because the absolute fucking nutjob just moved his family into the house where the previous family were hanged to death in the garden. Great idea, mate. As if that wasn't bad enough, he happens across a box of films in the attic. The Americans call it the attic. And on these films, it shows a recording of the moment of the hanging, as well as other footage from previous families that were murdered in different locations. Now, as he begins to watch these and dives into his research, he causes his wife no ends of stress, because, damn, they really go through it in this film. But increasingly spooky stuff happens as well, as he somehow discovers links that these murders may be connected, and that the perpetrator is called Mr. Boogie, which doesn't sound very scary, but I'm guessing that's like a fun way to call him the Boogeyman. He's kind of creepy looking. I mean, like, if you watched the like Ninja Turtles cartoon when I was younger, he kind of reminds me of like Casey Jones. But yeah, I was kind of really expecting to be scared by this film quite a lot, but I wasn't. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, like the jump scares just didn't seem to build much tension for me. So I couldn't really get tense enough to be jumped by it, but I really enjoyed the vibe, and it was a really cool film. So we've had gore, creatures, and spooky houses, so now it's time for some zombies. Honestly, the first thing that struck me about this film is not even anything to do with like the plot, it's just the fact that they managed to close off parts of London so that it was completely empty for when they film in. And I'm like, looking at it was insane. I know obviously they're a film crew, they can do what they want, I guess, but seeing London that empty was kind of insane. This was a really cool film, and it showed like the scariest iteration of zombies, which I guess technically they're not zombies, they are just suffering from rage-induced madness thanks to the fucking psycho chimp bites that they get. So they're not technically zombies, but they are really still scary. They honestly made the apocalypse seem kind of chill for a bit, like everything's empty. At one point they're going around like a supermarket, just taking whatever they want, just having a laugh, having a good time. But then reality hits and you're chased by Olympic level sprinters of zombies. Because in this film, they're not the shamblers like they are in other films. They run and they're terrifying. So like, you're really never safe. You make any noise and they're bolting for you. And honestly, the last half an hour of this film is like, it's phenomenal. The tension level that they create and like the soundtrack. If you haven't seen this film, watch it. It was very good. Now, what would you do if you happened upon a mysterious children's book featuring old spooky Mr. Babadook on the front? Yeah, you've probably been it and all. Shame though, because every time you try and get rid of the book, it will turn up at your doorstep again, and the pages will contain increasingly threatening images and words. So that's fun. I really wasn't expecting much from the Babadook, but it delivered more than I anticipated. It's wonderfully acted, and it really did like a great job of just making me feel so unbelievably uncomfortable. Like the kid in the film especially did a great job, because honestly he freaks me the fuck out. I also didn't realise this was where the "why can't you be normal? Ah!" like meme was from. So that was that was a fun like. Then after all that, like within the last 10 minutes or so of the film, I had like the light bulb appeared in my head, and I was like, oh, I get this. Like I get what the film's about. I get the metaphor. I've seen like mixed opinions on whether people think the metaphor is too heavy-handed or not, but from my personal experience, I thought it kind of hit the nail on the head, so I liked it. I won't say too much more about it if you decide to watch it or spoil what that metaphor is, but it made sense to me. And if that wasn't enough, apparently the Babadook is a gay icon, so there's always that. What's scarier than rich teenagers trying to out-virtue signal each other? That's right, nothing. So you got your standard settings, you've got a group of rich teens that all meet up at their friend's parents' mansion. They drink a little too much, they argue, they fall out, and in the midst of them all falling out and trying to figure out what's going on, one of the dudes outside is banging on the window, his neck is spurting blood, and he collapses dead on the patio. Now, of course, the first reaction is, who the fuck killed him? And when you've got a house full of people that don't really particularly like each other, that leads to a lot of blaming, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of incredibly out of pocket and mean things said to one another. And the tension builds as they're trying to discover who is picking them off one by one. I won't spoil any more about what happens and who the killer is, but it was not something I saw coming, and I thought was absolutely brilliant. It had me laughing for a good few minutes, and it was quite fun. So please, if you don't know anything about it, I'm not going to say any more. Don't look up anything about it, just watch it. Because I went in blind other than knowing what the film was called, and I'm really glad that I did. Also, there's a banger Charlie XCX song that plays at the end, so that's worth it too. Yeah, so I'd never watched this film before, so only felt right to include The Ring on this list. Now, this film played out almost entirely the same as a film I'd watched maybe a year or two ago called Noroi the Curse, which came out like 7 years after The Ring. So I think that it's clearly very heavily inspired by The Ring, and I'll explain why. For the most part, what reminds me of it is obviously it's called The Curse, which is what The Ring is. It's about a curse. And it was a really slow burn film that I wasn't expecting. You get set up with this premise that you watch, everyone knows you watch the videotape, you die in 7 days. The spooky girl comes out of the well and snaps your neck or whatever the fuck she does. And then that's sort of, you learn that, and then an hour and a half of like not much happening. But it's weird because one of these slow burn films where it's like not boring. I didn't find it boring. I was kind of engrossed with it, but at the same time it was kind of anticlimactic. I didn't really like live up to any expectations I had, which is a shame. That being said, I think that's probably because it's sort of a classic and I was expecting it to be better. But that being said, it's not a bad film. It is very slow, so if you're not into slow burn films, I'd probably give it a miss. But it was cool. I mean, everything else about it was cool. I just feel like it didn't deliver where it needed to. I don't know, it just didn't have any impact for me at the end, but I'd still say if you haven't watched it, you should probably watch it. Now for some family drama, nothing scarier. I'd heard lots of good things about Hereditary, so I tried to manage my expectations. You don't want to overhype things or be disappointed if it doesn't live up to this mythical expectation. But I didn't have to worry about it for this film, because out of all 13 films I watched for this video, it was the most effective at creating tension and just pure dread. Which is kind of a spoiler, I guess, for the rest of the films, but it is what it is. Now, this was one of those films that makes you desperately want to look away. Like, you don't want to be looking, like something will pop up on the screen and you don't want to look, you want to look away. But the more you look, the more uncomfortable you feel and the more anxious you start to get. And it created such it was so effective at doing that. It definitely had my, like, I was sat there, like, it made me shiver thinking about it, but I was like, it made me, like, there's a couple of times where I was like sat there watching and I was like, please don't move. Like, I don't want this thing to move. I think my only criticism is it kind of like is slow towards like the middle part. Like, there's not all that much that happens, but it's definitely, like, by the end of the film, it's definitely redeemed. Even if I don't really get the ending still, that's definitely a me problem because me not too smart. Bear with me here, but watching Beetlejuice felt like I was watching a Halloween version of Cat in the Hat. Now, does that make any sense? Is anyone watching this going, actually, I agree? Or are you thinking I'm a complete fucking moron? It's just got that feel to it, like, it's the house. When they start renovating the house, it reminds me of how the buildings look in Cat in the Hat. I don't know, like, it's just kind of silly. Got this, like, silly vibe, like, if you say his name 3 times, then he'll appear, which leads to, you know, a comedy of someone maybe saying it twice and then go to say it a 3rd time and they're like, shouldn't say that because they don't want to accidentally bring him out. And yeah, like I said, this film's incredibly silly. It was definitely, like, the most fun Halloween film on this list. I definitely want to watch the sequel, mostly because despite the film being called Beetlejuice, he's not really in the film all that much. Like, why didn't they have more screen time for Beetlejuice? Ooh, nearly summoned the fucker. Trick or treat? Or trick or treat? Now, this is the kind of Halloween film I really vibe with. Nothing but, like, pure Halloween fun. Maybe not family-friendly Halloween fun, but Halloween fun nonetheless. This film is basically a Christmas Carol, but for Halloween. The character Sam, who's like I guess the ghosts of Christmas past, future, and present, maybe? He doesn't necessarily attack anyone individually, it's more if you don't respect Halloween and its traditions. So what happens if you're caught disrespecting Halloween is that Sam, the adorable little creature or whatever the fuck he is, will turn up at your doorstep, probably dismember you, and, you know, you'll have learnt your lesson. I would honestly respect Halloween just for Sam alone because he's adorable. It's nothing to do with the fact that if I didn't, he would decapitate me and kill me with a lollipop. It's definitely nothing to do with that. So just remember, if you're ever thinking you're a bit of a Scrooge around Halloween, you better buck your fucking ideas up because otherwise Sam's going to do your head in with a lollipop. You don't want that. And last but certainly not least was the Terrifier, and I'm really not sure where to even begin with this. So basically, some absolute nutjob decides that one Halloween he's going to dress up as a really creepy clown and just go around fucking murdering people in, like, horrific ways as well. Like, you can't say that Art the Clown, the killer's name, is not creative because he's put thought into this. The gore looked pretty realistic for a film that I think's budget was like 35 grand or 35 US dollars. Gore was pretty good. Like, there's a part, spoilers, where a woman is sawn in half vertically with a hacksaw. Yeah. And whilst it's happening, it looks pretty convincing until obviously they cut through her. It looks like what you'd see when you walk into a butcher shop, as grim as that sounds. But it was like shocking. There's a couple of things that happened and I was like, oh, I didn't expect it to look quite like that. I guess they make use of, like, their camera angles and stuff so you don't see it for too long, but it was pretty effective. Other than that, or other than art, should I say, the acting isn't fantastic. The characters are very silly. Silly as in, like, stupid. Like, the things they do are just questionable, which you expect in these kind of films. Like I said, I say that's a bad thing, but it's just a trope, isn't it? And yet, despite the poor acting and all of that kind of stuff, the lack of any meaningful plot, I would still say watch this film. Yeah, it's stupid, but that's kind of the point. He is a clown after all. Honk. So there's 13 ooky spooky films that I decided to watch, prepare myself for Halloween. Let me know what your go-to horror films are, or what kind of films you like to watch this time of year, because I'm always interested to see what, like, people's go-tos are. Let me know what your favourite horror film is. I'm happy to add them to this long list I've got and get to them eventually. So thank you for watching. Enjoy your Halloween, whatever you might be up to, whether you're going out, getting turned lit and crunk dressed as a sexy cat, or whether you're indoors snuggled under a blanket watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, eating a bowl of salty and sweet popcorn. Enjoy yourself, and remember, always check your candy. Bye-bye now. Bye. Bye-bye now. Bye. Okay, get out of there.